Here we are. Hey, everybody. Hello. Better Spaces is a health and happiness solution for today's hybrid workplace. My name is Dr. Paul Kachoa with PAR5 Physical Therapy here in Randolph, New Jersey, and I've partnered with them to bring you an easy and educational workday session. So today's session is all about golf mobility, how to unlock your hips and spine for a more powerful swing. So as you know, lack of mobility in the hips and the thoracic spine, your mid-back and your shoulders can cause lower back pain and limit swing efficiency. In this session, you're going to learn how to improve your flexibility and mobility to create a smoother, pain-free golf swing. All right, so a little bit about me. I am a physical therapist. I've been in the field for over 25 years. Fun fact, I started out as a physical therapist assistant back in 2000 after being a PT aide in several other clinics. And then I got my doctorate from Mercy University in 2010, and I'm an orthopedic clinical specialist, certified dry needling specialist, certified level 1 CrossFit coach, certified golf medical professional by the Titleist Performance Institute, and certified golf fitness trainer. So for the past, say, 15 years or so, I would say 13, 15 years, I've been treating golfers of all levels, amateurs, and helping them move better, feel better, and play better. So let me pull up my slides and we're going to get started. Okay, so just to make this super helpful and informative for everybody, use the chat box. If you have any questions, I want to get them answered today because I want this session to be worthwhile. I don't want you to take time out of your day just to come in and not get your questions answered, not get the info that you need. All right, so keep that in mind. Feel free, use the chat box, raise your hand, whatever. Okay, so because I'm a medical professional, I got to put this slide up. If you're dealing with pain or some other injury, this class today is with general information that's aimed at a broad population. So if you're dealing with something specific, make sure that you have your limitations, your deficits fully assessed, get a full physical examination from a medical professional. And if you're going to do some of the things that we're going to get to work today, be gentle, be cautious, go slow. Pain should never be part of the exercise, mobility, stretching experience, right? Because stretching, mobility, stuff like that is the basis of all movement. And a part of that is limited by your central nervous system, your brain, your spinal cord, all your nerves. So if you have pain, that also feeds back into the muscle tension and limits your ability to move or that tissue elasticity. So if you wanted things to get loose, get long, or joints to move, we have to work within a pain-free range of motion, go slow, breathe deep, and exhale long so that we calm down our nervous system so we lower that level of threat and are able to make permanent changes in our body. All right. And the other thing too is that we want to do these consistently. If you reveal or you find out that something is tight, the more consistent you are, the more you do it, the more that we can overcome those deficits and make positive progress and adaptations in our body. All right. So my general theme is that everybody, not just golfers, can benefit from a healthy and efficient body, right? Golf is a sport, right? But there is exercise. My philosophy is just like walking. If walking is your only ability to exercise, then fine. But walking is just locomotion. It's getting from point A to point B. It doesn't give us the metabolic or physiological loading to change or adapt our body's, strength, flexibility, range of motion, whatever, speed. It's not exercise, right? We must prepare our body to move through large ranges of motion and move external weight and load to make adaptations so that when we do, say, go out and play golf, that we can move fast and generate speed and power. But we can't generate speed and power unless we have good strength, stability, and essentially the range of motion first. So this is what we're going to be talking about today, talking about mobility, primarily in the hips and the torso, because The body functions on this alternating pattern of stability and mobility. If this pattern is disrupted, then pain or injury is a result. If you've been to any of my classes, you've probably heard that before. I kind of summarize musculoskeletal issues in 6 years, 7 years of education in like one slide in like 10 seconds. So just take a look at this. Starting from the ground up, we start from the foot. That foot needs to be stable. Ankle needs to be mobile. Knee needs to be stable. Hip needs to be mobile, right? Lower back needs to be stable. The lower back is not designed to rotate. It can rotate a little bit, 5 to 10 degrees, but really the primary rotary segments of our body are our hips and our thoracic spine, the T-spine. And those are the important parts of your golf swing. If we're limited in those two parts, typically the body figures out a way to compensate and unlocks the lower back and makes the lower back a unstable segment or a mobile segment, and then that can create back pain. I mentioned this before, this triangle or this hierarchy of movement, right? We need to build a solid base. To be able to play a sport with skill, we need to have that solid base. So with skill and sport being the top, the bottom is going to be range of motion and joint mobility, tissue extensibility, flexibility, strength, stability, power, speed. You need to build this up. So we can't perform well at the top unless we have the basics on the bottom. Okay? All right. So let's get to work. Without further ado, let's talk about thoracic spine and the hips. These are the two spots that we're going to be working on today to improve the mobility. All right, so let's get into our golf fitness exercises here. So I'm going to pull up my other camera here. So we've got this and we've got that. All right. So the first thing that we're going to go over, make sure I got nothing in my pockets because this is going to be a lot of movement. So you got to get up out of your chair, wherever you are. We're going to grab a piece of floor. And if you have like a band or a foam roller, that would be great. All right. So the first thing is that we're going to work on thoracic spine. Okay. So the thoracic spine is basically where the ribs are connecting into the back, right? Cervical spine's up top with the neck, and then lumbar spine is down low. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to use my my foam roller as a little bit of a pillow or a head support. You're going to lie down on your side for this first bit. Now, like I said before, the lumbar spine does not like to rotate. So we want to try and lock out the lumbar spine with a certain positioning. Okay, let's make sure that this other thing is kind of pointed down so you get that overhead view. You want to get all these different angles so you can see what's going on. So the first thing is that the lumbar spine needs to be flexed. If the more we flex or round out the lower back, the less it's going to move and be unlocked when we try and stretch out or mobilize the thoracic spine. So it's almost like a fetal position we want to go into, right? So the knees, we're going to bring the knees up into the chest as tight as possible. And there's a couple different variations of this exercise. We're going to go through the easy one and work our way all the way up into more advanced positions. The bare minimum with all of these movements for the thoracic spine is no movement through the pelvis, the hips, and the knees. All right, make sure I'm in the good angle here with my camera. And what we're going to do is just kind of hold those knees together, or thighs or hips, wherever you can reach with your bottom hand. So if I'm lying on my left side, I'm going to hold my legs together, stabilize them, make sure that they don't move with my left hand. And my right hand first is going to grab my ribs underneath, right? So if I kind of wiggle my hand there and I'm grabbing a set of ribs, I'm going to rotate and use my right hand to pull my ribs to my right. So now we've got thoracic rotation. So this is sort of like level one, really easy, trying to introduce this motion in a pain-free way and not strain any muscles. So we're just going to rotate, trying to make sure that as we're moving, we're not moving the knees. So, and the other thing too is that as we're rotating through this direction here, you want to turn your head so that we kind of move everything above the lower back. So it's thoracic spine, cervical, we're turning to the right. All right, so I'm just kind of repeatedly going through this. If we're going through mobilization of joints, I typically don't hold them for too long. I might go into that range of motion, hold for a second or two, but then I just repeatedly do that move. All right. So the more that we do it over approximately a minute and a half to 2 minutes can make permanent change into the joint mobility that we're addressing. All right. So the second version of this is freeing this top hand, freeing this right hand, and doing several things. One option is to go put your hand behind your head. And then as you do this, we're going to do everything the same. Left hand's going to stabilize the hips. My lower back is really flexed, rounded. And I'm going to turn my head and I'm rotating my elbow to my right as I take my thoracic spine and go to the right. So again, hips, knees as still as possible, and then rotate and you go as far as you can. All right, so we're going through that. Now, option 3 is to unhook this arm and let it go free. The major thing that I see, the error, performance error, is just going through and then doing this. So as you can see, I'm just moving my arm. I'm not moving my head. I'm not moving my thoracic spine. I want the weight of the arm to add to the stretch of my thoracic spine, my trunk. So as I'm going to do this, I'm going to keep my eyes, my head turned to my hand, and my hand is in line with my nose as I rotate and I turn back. The weight of the arm is now going to take my thoracic spine into a deeper end range of motion. But again, I'm not just moving the shoulder. If I went like that, that's all shoulder. And then this is pretty much where my thoracic spine stops. So here's the stop of my thoracic spine right there. And if I just allowed my shoulder to unhook, I would go this. And then if you don't stabilize that shoulder or let it go too far, then you might wind up with some shoulder issues. So we want to avoid that, right? So that's our open book exercise series. You know, we have the rib grab, we have the hand behind the head, and then we have the arm free. We would repeat that on both sides. Okay, so we want to do this on both sides. So real quick, just kind of go, get really rounded. Here's the angle from here, part of my back, and then we do the same thing. Okay, so that's our open book. Now that's the thoracic spine. Now I'm going to go into the hips. The hips, we can go into what we call a hip drop. Hip drop is really easy. Again, level 1, we're on our back. Our feet are wider than our hips or our shoulders, right? The wider the feet go with this knee bent position, the more that we'll be able to mobilize or isolate this move at the hips, and the less we'll rotate through the lower back. If the feet are together and I just do this move, it'll be all lower back moving. So if I go wide and then let the knees go like windshield wipers, if I go left to right, I got both hands now on my ribs and trying to palpate and monitor how much spine rotation I'm getting. If I feel like my butt comes up, if it comes up an inch, that's okay, but I don't want my ribs to come up and my shoulder to come off here. It's really, when you're starting out with these joint mobility exercises, is trying to be as specific and controlled as possible, not introducing these compensations that we are typically accustomed to, that our body is accustomed to. Our body is really good at finding the path of least resistance and going through a range of motion and substituting joints for other joints for tight joints. So as you're going through here, again, it's about a minute and a half to 2 minutes, trying just to go moving in and out of this position, getting the hips warmed up. The next level of that is to do it in a seated position. Now, the more upright I sit, the more difficult this is going to be, right? So I typically make it easy. My hips are typically very tight. So I'll do it in more of a reclined position, but still feet wide. And I'll kind of let my knees do the windshield wiper and hip drop both sides here, left to right. All right, and then working through that end range, pausing for a second or two, and then going into the other way. Okay, so that is the 2 primary exercises that I would start off with to do thoracic rotation mobilization and hip rotation mobilization. So those are the real easy ones. Let me check my list here. So the other thing that I want to work on as well is a couple other techniques, not just rotation, but other ways to unlock these joints. So for the thoracic spine, I'm going to use my handy foam roller here to unlock the thoracic spine. Now, typically, when we're sitting and our spine mid-back is rounded, just like when the lower back is rounded, it locks up. And we have a harder time to rotate if our upper back is too rounded. So to kind of mobilize the thoracic spine and open that up a little bit, open the joints up a little bit, we'll bring out the foam roller. So I'm going to start putting the foam roller on my lower ribs, okay? And then I'm going to lock up where my hips are and where my feet are. We're not going to move that. I'm going to put my hands behind my head. And what I want to do is create tension in my upper back by bringing my elbows forward. When I bring my elbows forward, separates my shoulder blades and then creates tension in my upper back, winds up that tissue. So that when I do the movement here is thoracic extension over the foam roller, I'm able to get the mobilization, get the movement through the joint and not just through the soft tissue. Okay, so I could lock up the tissue and then kind of mobilize that and be careful without, again, substituting lower back extension for thoracic spine extension. You want to make sure that the abdominals and everything down on this side of the foam roller stays still so that when I go back, I'm mobilizing only all the segments above the foam roller. So it's not a big move. Again, if I unlock my lower back, I can just go really far. But I want to mobilize that joint that's on top of the foam roller. And there's 13 segments, so we can scoot down a little bit and then maybe about 3 inches higher and repeat the same motion. Again, trying to keep my lower back stabilized and my shoulder blades together out of the way. Hopefully the mic isn't getting too loud as I'm doing this. And then I'm going to repeat that. I'm just going to repeat that. And usually it takes a couple of minutes to get through each of these segments. So that's one way to kind of unlock the joints. Another way to unlock the hip joint, especially because our bodies adapt to positions that we put it in for prolonged periods of time, is the hip flexor stretch. So the hip flexor stretch is kneeling with one foot in front. The hip flexor starts on the lower back, psoas muscle, dives through the abdominal cavity, and inserts into the front part of the hip here. So because it crosses over a couple of joints, we want to stabilize those joints. The first thing that we want to do is contract this glute muscle, this butt cheek, and tilt the pelvis backwards, and then keep the abdominals on, which joins the ribs, my torso, sternum, to my pelvis. Once I do that, then I lock up both ends of the joint, the muscle, and then I bring my hips forward. As I bring my hips forward, I should feel this stretch here. And again, just like with everything else, if I unlock those two spots, if I let my glute turn off and my abdominals turn off, then I can go a lot farther because, again, it's not stable. The muscle ends, the insertion and origin points aren't stable, and I can just kind of go through there. And then I'm accentuating my lumbar extension, and we're not being specific with our stretch. So you want to kind of unlock, really lock this in, contract the glute, pelvis kind of rotates, tailbone's underneath, tucked under, abdominals on, rib cage stays down, and then you're going to go forward, holding that for 30 seconds. So that's going to be our hip flexor stretch. I'm going to do that on both sides, and that's going to help with our hip mobility as well. Now, the secret sauce is when you improve your joint range of motion and improve your flexibility, but not educate your body on how to maintain that range of motion. All right, so it's like I'm giving you a new toy, but I'm not telling you how to use it or how to play with it. So what we do to reinforce our thoracic mobility and our hip mobility is some resistance training, or just neuromuscular re-education if you want to be super fancy about it. So the first one is going to be thoracic rotation. I want to reinforce my range of motion that I just gained with my exercises that I did. So I've got this simple elastic resistance band. I'm in my half kneeling position, which builds flexibility in this back hip and also lower body stability. I got to balance myself in this position. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the band and then just pull it apart. So as I pull it apart and the band touches my chest, I activate my upper back muscles. My shoulder blades are touching, my arms are straight, and then I rotate. So here, I'm going to try and reinforce that rotation right over my right leg, which is in front of my body, without having the back or the band come away from my chest. So again, rotation thoracic spine versus arm, right? The band's off my chest. I'm just moving my arm. I'll show you on the other side. Here we go. So I'm pulling apart. Band is in contact with my chest. My shoulder blades are back. I'm engaging my core and my hips, my glutes, and I rotate over the lead leg. I like rotating over the lead leg because this also reinforces the next thing, which we're going to do, hip rotation, internal rotation. So I'm doing this again for about a minute, right? Try to make sure that as I rotate, I'm not doing this. I'm not letting the band come away from my trunk. So this is thoracic rotation. So if I'm stretching into thoracic rotation, I'm using this band, using the muscles to go as far as I can and telling my central nervous system and my body that this is the range that we've improved and this is how we're going to use it, using those muscles. The other one is hip, internal rotation. So let's put this up because we're going to do this in standing. When we do hip internal rotation, we're thinking about the golf swing, all right? So I'm going to attach this band to a stable surface around hip height. And let's think about my left leg, for example, right? If I'm in golf posture, I want to go to the top of my backswing. That's external rotation on this lead leg, my left leg. And then as I go into impact and then follow through, my finish, that turns into internal rotation on my lead leg, my lead hip. Internal rotation is typically, not all the time, but typically the direction where most people are most tight. So again, after we improve that hip internal rotation with our stretching on the floor, we want to feed into that position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this band, wrap it around me, so I attach it with my hand to my opposite hip. And then I'm going to step away, make sure that's like in my hand, and my hand stays locked into my hip here, my pelvic bone on my right side, and I'm just going to rotate. As I rotate, the band is coming around my back of my pelvis, and around my front left leg, and off to the side where it's attached. So I'll show you that there, okay? So then I'm just going to get into golf posture. Here I am, right? And then I want to rotate and pretend that I'm just going into impact and into finish, right? So here, the band, it's attached to my pelvis. I am resisting that internal rotation over that lead leg, all right? So again, if you think about a drill for exercise or for golf itself, we're rotating the pelvis, trying to work the muscles around, pushing off this leg, getting the weight on my left leg, trying to stay in our golf impact position, my spine angle, and internally rotating the left hip. So I'm going to repeatedly do that, go through that motion, and then to do the right side, my trail side for internal rotation, I'm going to attach it to my left hip, rotate around so it goes across and in front. And then I'm going to rotate to my right hip and picture trying to maintain spine angle as I rotate into my backswing. This is a lot tighter for me on my right hip, but we're trying to rotate internally onto that trail side, that right hip, again with the band resistance. All right. Another different version, little bonus points. We could throw in the arm. I love doing this drill for a lot of my advanced players here, is that I start with one hand right on my chest, right hand on my chest. If you're a right-handed golfer, we're going to use a push down the line from impact. So if we go into our golf posture, I'm just going to rotate and push down the line, trying to keep my head on my target, my imaginary ball that's there, and I rotate my pelvis and I push this down the line. Kind of reinforces all of the things that we just did, thoracic rotation and internal rotation of my lead hip. So another bonus exercise for you guys to think about doing. Alrighty, so let me pull up my camera here. We'll realign everything and kind of check our comments. our chat box and see if anybody has any questions. All right. So let's take a look. I want to, again, to repeat, I want to make sure that all these sessions, all my classes, are as helpful and informative as possible and answer all your questions that you might have. So I always give everybody like 30-second countdown before I close these classes and summarize everything up. Oh, you're welcome. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for taking time out of your day and joining me. You could look for this session and many more on demand on any of the Better Spaces apps. I'll be back next week, Tuesday, April 15th, where we can continue with this golf theme. We're going to go over strength training for golf, core and glute power for a stronger swing. Okay, a strong core and glutes are essential for generating power and preventing lower back pain. This session that's coming up next week is going to cover how to build strength in the key muscles that support an efficient and pain-free golf swing. What are you going to learn? You're going to learn why core strength reduces low back stress in golf, glute activation exercises to improve hip stability and power, core stability drills for better rotational control, how to maintain good posture and mechanics during your swing, and strength-based recovery techniques to prevent injury. All right, all that and more maybe next week. If you have any questions, feel free to email me here at paul@par5pt.com or team@betterspaces.com. All right, thank you for coming and be well. Have a great day.